Let us now look at the political setting of this text, a vindication of the rights of women. Now, when Hannah More, one of Wollstonecraft's more conservative contemporaries, remarked that there was something fantastic and absurd in the very title of A Vindication of the Rights of Women, she was trying to ignore that, ridiculous as it may have seemed to some, its moment had arrived. Wollstonecraft's work was written during a period of great social and political upheaval. In France, the revolution was proclaiming the rights of man, and in England, radicals were bringing fear to the aristocracy and defenders of it like Edmund Burke. Political agitation had been part of the community in which Wollstonecraft matured. She had come of age intellectually, the friend of men like Dr. Richard Price, and part of a group of artists and intellectuals, which included men such as Thomas Paine, who was the author of The Rights of Man, which was published in 1791. So, it was an age in England that seemed to usher in a new era of freedom. And actually, we can look back at the words of Wordsworth, the poet William Wordsworth, who had written, quote, "Bliss was it in that dawn to be alive, but to be young was very heaven," unquote. So all about Mary, the conversation was about reform. Reform in France, reform of the English Parliament, and reform of the English electorate. A Vindication of the Rights of Women was written by a woman and a radical who took the egalitarian reform principles of her age and applied them for the first time in the long annals of literature about women to her own sex. The Vindication is at once a product of this period of radicalism and a pioneer in its new application. It could only have been written when all social and political values were under fundamental challenge. But since this challenge had its roots in 4 decades of agitation, some sense of the radical fervor of late 18th century England is essential in order to understand Wollstonecraft's feminist challenge to English conservatism. The intellectual core of English radicalism in the late 18th century was as old as John Locke's Second Treatise, 1689, and as recent as Rousseau's Social Contract, 1762. The argument was quite simple. Sovereign power did not dwell in the monarchy or in any aristocracy or oligarchy. A political community derived legal authority only from the consent of each individual governed by it, a consent which could be withdrawn by each individual as freely as it had been given. Now, readers of both Locke and Rousseau would have concluded that the Constitution and the institutions to which it gave power should be changed by the people governed if these institutions abused the authority that had been lent to them. The individuals in the community would exercise their sovereign power by virtue of the capacity to reason intelligently with which they were born, a capacity strengthened by proper education.